Hey, Don.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Good evening.
I doubt it because he went to the airport yesterday.
So he would try to join virtually.
That's why I'm here. Ever again.
He did great. He did great. So, blame my wife for.
You only respond to emails.
Apparently I haven't even been doing that today either. I checked it as I was walking in. I'm like, ah, crap. But, it's fine. It's not, it's fine.
No, I'm not.
All right, good to go.
Oh.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, September 11th. This is Celebration Residential Owners Association monthly workshop. We'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Lauren, was the meeting properly noticed?
It was properly noticed.
We have quorum.
You do?
Do you have a motion to adopt the agenda?
To adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we are here to discuss the budget. So there's no opposition from the board. We're going to kick it off to Andrew to give an executive summary for about 7-8 minutes, and then we'll turn it over to Jim. Sound good?
Yeah, just framework would be quick overview, a little bit of background, and then looking at how we're doing so far this year. And then I'll hand it off to Jim. Jim can look at the 12-month projections to what the 2025 budget's going to look like. And we'll go from there.
Cool.
So
All yours.
the first is just the assessments. Wanted to show this. So the work that was done over the past about 6 weeks is that we came to a 6.8% recommendation on the assessment. That's an $82 increase. And looking at the past 3 years prior, it's been averaging about 7.2. So we're kind of in that range of about 7%. And going to the next slide, the iterations I just wanted to show. So there was 5 different iterations, and it started at 16.3 was what the Finance Committee received from Grand Manners to begin with. Through their work over the numerous meetings and discussions, it was brought down to the 6.8, which we are today, and we're presenting and discussing. And looking at the 2024 budget, there was some, I guess, disagreement toward the end of the process that the Finance Committee did not support that final budget. So that's something that I hope today and this year we do have that cooperation from both the board and communication with the Finance Committee, that we do find a resolution that we are all in agreement on what the path is to move forward. So just putting that out there that I hope we are collective in what the final solution will be for the 2025 budget. In looking at what is in the future budget that wasn't last year, some line items. So Eco Labs was our improvement on the pool that did not exist. Looking at the 2024 budget, the chemicals were under budgeted, and this was an added expense to improve the service, so something we have to take account. Smart Webs is for an improvement of the ARC process. Something that was discussed but not included, I think by error, was the employee benefits plan of about $120,000. So that's something that was recently added in mid-year this year of an issue that was found. So something that isn't in last year that will be expected to be in future ones. Then in looking at the budget for 2024, there was only mulch for one time. As far as, I think the expectation is that there is a spring and a fall mulch application. So that would be an additional expense. The landscape architect and town architect, I know that was taken out. That's something that we as a board wanted to put back in. Regarding the 25,000, it's a consultancy role, not a full-time role. So that's why those numbers. And then finally, our issue with town hall and the inability to use that is where the 70,000 expense comes in. So as we look at that, that's about $500,000 in expenses that were not accounted for in the 2024 budget. So in looking at that, just dividing it by the average lot alone, before looking at anything else, that would be 101 increase. So just want to put that as a framework of what we're working with as far as looking forward. Then jumping over to risks, a couple things to take into account that are, I would say, still up in the air. One is the reserve study. I believe that's due next week. The current number we're using is old reserve study, which is about $1,071,000. Depending on if that reserve comes in at 1.1, 1.2, we'll have to adjust this accordingly, which ideally that would be a further increase to the 6.8 that it currently is. Two other issues. We have the joint meeting with CROA on Monday regarding the cost sharing agreement. Sounds like they're agreeable to a 1-year deal right now, but again, they had the demand of this $60,000 marketing manager position, which I am not comfortable in including in any budget for 2025 right now, unless we do get some type of solidified agreement with them on what that future budget will look like and cost sharing agreement. So that's not in here. And then the last thing would be Grand Manners. We're going to be talking to them the week of the 23rd. So right now it's budgeted as a 5%, which is what it is currently this year. And depending on how those go, that could be an up or down scale. So those are 3 risks that are on them at this point.
So I was at that meeting the other night with the CJC. We collectively as a board agreed to that 1-year term,
And
not that we're going to go back. And we agreed to the marketing, the communication first.
so here's
Was I at a
where
different meeting, Eric? I'm not sure.
No, I think it was discussed.
We discussed.
I heard discussion, I did not hear final agreement.
So let's,
And one more thing to make on that is, and not to belittle any of you guys as members of the board, the CJC is a 5-person member, and those are the ones that make the decision on the cost sharing agreement finalizing.
Not when we had that discussion amongst us jointly.
noted, can we?
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's get to the exact summary so you guys can run.
Sure. All right. So then if we go to the comparison page, I'm just going to look at the fiscal year 2024 and run through these fairly quickly so then we can jump to Jim's 2025 budget comparison. But in starting on row 7, the full rate of assessments, there were 41 parcels in Island Village that weren't accounted for. So that's why that number is a little larger. Capital improvement and assessments, the sale performance is better performing so far, so that's why that's a little larger. In looking at other income, interest on investments have been overperforming, and then covenants and late fees have been higher than usual. So that's why that is higher. And then homeowner activities, there was annual sponsorships that were not included in the budget. So that was that driving factor. So on a net positive, revenues are coming in higher by about $170,000, which is a positive. But then we get to the negative on expenses, which for landscaping, that's a little bit higher. Pool expenses, obviously, Ecolab, we put that in, so that's going to be driving that. Maintenance was very under budgeted based on the condition of our parks and what needed to happen, so that was a pretty large miss. Irrigation, pretty nominal. Janitorial, nominal. Safety and security, that is a positive. That with the Mayberry contract, that is a more lucrative deal for us compared to what we have with Apex. So we did So that kind of concludes my quick overview and look at the current year. I'll pass it over to Jim and you can start going through the summary of the 2025.
Rules of engagement for tonight. Do you just want to pause for questions from us, or do you just want to run through it? You just want to be respectful of you want to run through this, however you guys want to do it. I assume it's.
I'm fine if you guys want to ask questions as we go through it.
That's fine.
The question I have is, do you want to go through the line by line on there? Or do you want to just go through the?
Legal.
I want to go through the
Consensus.
line by line because I have questions.
We've got 2 hours. Well,
I would prefer to go through the summary and then if there's questions within that, we can jump to the line by line.
so what do you all want to do? I mean, I'm open to whatever.
Don't make a difference what I say.
This is the first time we're looking at it as a board, so.
Oh, we
there's
should
probably
go
going-
line by line, so we're all understanding.
What would the finance committee recommend?
They're gonna recommend what they're gonna recommend.
Well, I'd like to hear. that.
Well, I think in the best interest of the organization, so I think
You would what?
Can we,
we're operating in the best interest of the organization, so I think what we recommend would probably be a good recommendation.
so, yes, can we, what is
So
your,
I think the summaries, the major categories, and then if you have concerns, then dig into the weeds.
Yeah.
That would be the most productive.
let's go for it. Good. All right. It's all yours.
Okay, so as Andrew pointed out, the summary up there.
Yes.
I'm not going to go through all the expenses again. The 2 things we all know are the exquisite contract was a bit more than Prince and Sons by 44,000. And in this, we have an increase in headcount of 3.5 new positions. And when we get to compensation, you'll see there's a lot of higher salaries they went at for qualified candidates that they hired into their positions. The good news, again, is that Mattamy is opening phase 2 next year at Island Village. That's 87 plats in phase 2A and 252 plats in phase 2B. So that's a total of 339 lots that will be paying dues next year and increasing our revenue.
I have a question,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Does that mean these buildings will be built?
No.
Or they're just not built yet,
They're not, nothing's going to be built before the end of the year.
before
they-
the end of 2020?
Right, but in October of 24 and in November of 24, the executives of Mattamy have talked to both Grant Manners and myself, said that they were going to sign up for these plats because they have to get approval from Osceola County
Right.
before they can start building.
Right, what about the amenity center?
There's been no discussion about the.
Yeah, I don't think we did the timeline. This is just,
Come on.
we need to,
What?
It won't come online till, or,
25.
yeah, October 25, early 26.
Right, so if it comes online in October 25, we need to think about staffing that amenity center, right?
Well, we would have to talk about maybe adding another Parks and Rec person, something like that. I mean, we can have a full-time
Yeah.
person.
So is
Just
that
like-
being taken into consideration?
It isn't because that's going to be so much more toward the end of the year. And you remember how long it took to open the amenity center in phase 1?
Well, I
So-
remember we were budgeted for the fourth quarter, but TCC made us take it over in the first quarter, so we don't want to make that mistake again.
But is TCC still making that decision?
Yes.
No,
Does it make sense to
Yeah.
does it make sense to get a larger view of what's going on and then we can dig into?
They're, yes, I will say, they're only looking at 40 townhomes and 50 residences to be built next year.
okay,
So I don't think they're going to have the amenity center anywhere close to being done by the end of next year.
okay.
I guess just for all understanding, it doesn't matter if Matamy's building or not. They need to pull those plats and start paying the dues so that sewer and streets and electricity and everything get out there. So the actual sale of homes doesn't affect them paying the HOA dues.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what we fell into in last year with TCC making us take ownership of the amenity center in the first quarter of the year, and it wasn't budgeted until the fourth quarter of the year. which threw everything kind of off sync last year. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand. You
So
understand?
I know exactly what you're saying, but with only 90 out of 337 units,
I don't care about the houses. I'm talking about the amenities.
I know, but why would?
Hey, Celia,
I-
Celia, may I
I would-
interrupt, please?
Yeah,
Celia, there's no way there's gonna be an amenity center in fiscal year 2025. The
you.
earliest it could open.
That's all I want to know.
No, it won't, because it can't be constructed that fast, Celia. There's no way.
I know, that's what I just want to know. So we're not,
we're all good.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
they'll be
You
in,
know.
I know,
Down there.
yes.
One thing we didn't do either is put any money in for the sale of homes. So there will be some homes sold in 2025. We kept that out as an
Yeah.
upside, so we had to put it in there. All we did was put in for the flats and the entitlement, so we've got a reasonable upside for other things.
Okay, you can scroll down here. Again, Andrew talked about the assessments. He mentioned a 6.8% increase, but when you add in the trash, so we all pay that one number every quarter, that's net a 6.2% increase, which would be an increase of $24 per quarter in total on the dues. Now, the other assessment revenue, apartment recreation fees, you can see is up 254,000. That's a 30% increase. That is because that is built upon operating expense account categories that you see have gone up in expenses, obviously. And so it is a set calculation that will be provided, and these numbers will be given to the apartments before the end of the year. Lauren, do you have anything else to add?
We also did some additional massaging of what staff are included in the apartment rec fee. Because the front counter ladies weren't included in them, so we included a percentage of their salaries in there, because they do help the residents with their IDs and questions.
Mattamy not adding apartments in the next phase, right?
They cannot add any more apartments in Island Village.
No, just homes and townhomes.
So the apartments get right now, sorry, Jen.
Yep.
Okay, for me, the apartments get right now, staff time for their ID. They get inspection by our CROA inspector, right?
Yes,
They take over all of our events because there's 1,800 units, doors, and they're only paying 30.30%. That's
no, that's a 30%.
30% increase,
last year.
increase from last year.
Can you pull up the apartment rec cost tab so Celia can see them?
Sorry, I mean.
No, it's a good question.
Wanna be
You want
sure.
me-
we can't afford
So
amenities.
Yeah,
let's pause for a second.
Okay.
sure.
You all are driving this meeting, right? So I want to make sure we're respectful. Do we want to dig into the apartment rec fee?
Yeah.
At this point, it's
That's
6:17.
fine. No, that's what we're here for. We're trying here to explain to.
Answer the question.
Make sure we
Yeah.
use the time effective.
Okay, so the apartment rec fees are fed by operation of the amenities, parks and rec expenditures, and lifestyles events, and the staff that support them, the cost to maintain them, so the reserve fund, the insurance for that. And then it's offset by any revenue that you get from the amenities or the events. And then.
So the only thing they don't do is have the right to vote. They get everything else
Correct.
at a nominal fee.
And Lauren,
Yes.
your process is consistent with the past couple of years of how this is calculated.
So the 21, 22, and 23 budget was utilizing an incorrect formula for the apartment rec fees. That was an formula inherited by the treasurer at the time. When we started the 24 budget in 2023, we're trying to validate that the formula was correct, because I didn't have the document that supported it. We found, I think there's like about 11 amendments to this document. We found the final one and updated the formula, so it's the correct formula, and it's been consistent from 24 to this year.
Is that the correct formula too?
Yes.
And if you can scroll down, I think for Celia too, the cost per unit is going from the 426.31 in 2024 up to the 55507 for the budget.
Per door, right?
Correct.
That's what I'm saying.
Can they? Who, this is gonna sound silly, but who pays that?
The apartment.
The apartment complex.
Yeah, and then typically they'll pass that.
Got it. So this just gets, I guess what I'm asking is, can NOAA say no? Is it-
It's part of their needs and restrictions.
Got it. I can't tell what movie they're watching.
Yes.
Any other questions on apartment rec fees or shall we move on?
Okay. Next line is other income. Other income includes all the things like late finance charges, late payment fees, miscellaneous income, covenant fees, interest income. And this year we're projecting a $74,000 decrease because we are being conservative, particularly with interest income. As you see, it's down 33,000. Covenant fees down 15,000 and late payment fees down to 22,000, what we budgeted versus what we're going to get in 24. Just again, to be conservative.
The other thing there is we're going to have a tax liability for the interest income that we haven't determined yet, but it's probably going to be in the $30,000 range, somewhere in that range.
Low one would be 30, high end potentially 60. So somewhere in that range.
I have a question. I don't know if this would relate or not, but that playground we donated, does that help reduce that income?
I don't think so.
I don't think it's
Other than having impact.
It's not deductible because this is income from other business purposes or investments. It's not going to be, we're not taxed on our regular business. This is an alternative form of income with the investments. I think the way the IRS will look at it, I don't think we get a deduction.
Sorry, I have no question. On the other income.
Mhm.
I mean, I did go through this today while I was babysitting. So, service area maintenance fee. Is this the conversation that I wanted to bring up in regard to the service area claiming that? Do you want me to read it or do you want to explain it?
So the service area maintenance fees is part of the service area supplemental charters to the CROA charter. CROA charges that fee to the service areas to cover the cost of salaries, benefits, overhead, other expenditures to provide the services to the service areas that they receive by the town hall staff.
So when someone states that their service area has gone up 47% since 2022, how do we explain that?
So it's gone up 17% since 2022. It typically, historically, it's gone up by the inflation rate each year. Obviously, the board can make a concerted decision to change the increase each year, but it's a board decision of what the increase is.
Lauren, can you pull up the service area tab?
And this year,
In alignment with that.
20,
It was 8.5% in 2022, a 4% increase in 2024, and for the 2025 budget, a 4% increase with inflation. So that's the 3 years of what that adjustment looks like.
So it's not 47%. Well, so we need to I'm just trying to make a statement here because this is a public meeting and you're being accused of something that isn't accurate. And I just want it stated by the committee and the board that it's not true. Person stating that. Thank
Well,
you.
if I-
Sorry, Jim.
no, that's okay. You're good.
I'll look at it, right, if you go with 214,000 in 2025 and 2022 was 100,000, you're looking at a 17.35 increase
Thank you.
over 3 years.
Not 47%.
Is it possible that person was thinking their own service area specific dues, not necessarily the streets?
Well,
I think they were.
and I will say for the service areas, their expenditures are most,
But that's one service area. They were comparing their
But-
changes.
This
So-
is the one service area. that is trying to cause a scene within 13 service areas we have? 14 service areas, sorry. Only been doing it for 4 years. Trying to cause a scene that this is happening within all the service areas, and it's not. And it needs to be stated that it's not.
So service area operating budgets are driven mostly by their reserve study. That's their biggest expenditure. Their second highest is their landscaping contract, mulch, and then electrical, water. Those are the main things. And then their service area fee.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand that the service area fee is separate from essentially all the things that are just specific to their service area. It's two different things.
Right.
One is driven, as you mentioned, by their reserve study and what they have for their actual building. And then the other piece is the fee for the overhead. So it's two things.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, moving on to homeowner activities, income and expense. We are projecting next year revenues to be down 25,000. That's due to a bunch of things that we're not going to be doing next year. Celebration Happily is one of the bigger ones as far as bringing that down. And the expenses are pretty much flat. So we've got a negative there. The expenses are pretty much pushed around by the expenses were going to be even, I'm sorry, with last year.
Yeah, just comment here would be, the income is going to be down partially too because of town hall not being here, so we can't rent out Heritage Hall and other.
That's perfect.
That's good. That's next category.
But the baseline would be that we're keeping the cost the same, that we're funding homeowner activities the same as we were the prior year. That's $122. So.
Okay. Celia, any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Real, sorry, I'll ask one.
Yeah.
I know we have a few events classified under CCS. So Ups and Pines,
4th of July.
4th of July, Home Improvement Expo, and the 2 porch and yard sales.
so I probably know the answer to this. The revenue that we forfeit over to CCS, that would be a benefit to reclassify, just from an expense revenue perspective, to move that back under CROA. Because I'm wondering if there's revenue that potentially
There's,
we realize.
you get revenue from, porch and yard is kind of a net neutral, just a little bit. Home Improvement Expo does bring in a fair amount of revenue. Pups and Pints is usually a net positive. 4th of July runs a deficit significantly. The only downside to bringing them back under CROA is we can't get the experience Kissimmee grants that help us advertise and thus help us gain more revenue.
Okay.
Which we need to keep.
Okay, Parks and Rec, income and expense. The projected income of 248,000 is projected be 14,000 actually higher than primary issues are the 851 partner program income and lower spring park rental income. The expense side is projected to be higher by 16,000 due to new volunteer program costs. The volunteer program is doing ID checks, software to run all that,
Checks.
and maintenance of amenity record. So not a lot of big changes in the park and rec side of things. Any questions?
We don't rent out, where are we with renting out the field complex?
Don't anymore, but if you want to start doing it again.
The reason it was stopped was because
Vandalism.
vandalism and, right?
There was, the reason why it was stopped was because there was a fight between two,
They vandalized the bathroom.
and they vandalized bathrooms, but I think it was mostly the fight that shut it down.
Yeah.
There was a fight between two, one person rented it as a resident but had someone else come in and there was a brawl in front of all the kids. And that's when we put a stop to it. Then there was the vandalism and that's what really shut it down.
I mean, we get a lot of applications, or do we, questions rather, or CCOC?
From the groups that used to rent it, we do, but they stopped asking since it's been since early 22, since we've not rented it.
Maybe.
I guess
but
it's
then
an
you're gonna have-
opportunity to do a run on the AstroTurf, but not the grass.
But then you're going to have, again,
Those fields are already,
you need to provide staffing for everything that hasn't happened. Now you need your park monitors, your maintenance, your Parks and Rec staff, right? If they open it back up to renting it to other people, is it gonna be like a wash? Like how much revenue are you gonna generate when you have to supply your team out there?
And is this something we just kick back to the Park and Rec?
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting for the Park and Rec Committee. I think that it would be one of those things where if you charge us a really, it's a high amount.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that if they were to vandalize everything and trash it, your fee is going to cover that, or the deposit covers that, or whatever. I don't know, it'd be something curious with the park, Parks and Rec could look at.
we'll bounce it off the committee.
We can help with a pro forma on that.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be great.
I think we all know the annual cost of that field is about $300,000 in maintenance.
That's kind of my worry, that I'm like,
Big ticket item.
it's a it's a big thing out there. And so, anything that we could get to try to offset some of that cost would be helpful without impacting anything that we're trying to do in the community.
Well, with all your new volunteers, maybe you can have volunteers.
Right.
They can patrol.
They can patrol with a bat.
Just give them a broom. Just give them a
Yeah,
broom.
just a broom.
Yeah, broom. Yeah, so.
Okay. Okay, moving on to direct operating expenses. Electricity, which is for everything that we have around here, is only up 4%, which we think is a reasonable amount to budget. Landscape maintenance, which is 1.3 million, obviously up 71,000, which is pretty much the increase in mulch and pine straw. And a little bit of the higher exquisite contract, offset by a couple things that we don't think we'll have to do next year that we did this year. So pool expenses, they're up, driven by the Ecolab contract, but it's netted out because we expect lower costs on pool chemicals and on pool equipment maintenance, right? Because they own the equipment.
Yeah.
So it actually will net down to hopefully around a $50,000 increase in pool expenses. Repairs and maintenance, we're just projecting small increases at all locations. It was way up this year, and we're just looking at, a little bit more cost next year, but not a lot. So 7.7% increase.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm not sorry, real. Vehicle maintenance. So we have $16,000 budgeted maintenance. Am I reading that right? 16,640?
Yes. Yep.
So Lauren, how many pickup trucks do you have now? And Charles, don't hit me. How many pickup?
There's three trucks.
Okay, so there's 3 trucks. And we're hiring a new operation manager. And Brian used to bring his own truck to work. Does the new operation manager have his own truck that he's gonna be using?
No, he won't be using his personal vehicle. It's not a requirement of the position. It
Okay.
was a choice made by Brian.
What's he gonna use to get around the community?
We're trying to figure that out at the moment.
Asking for a truck.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. I mean, they go out, they can't take the truck, the Nets to Island Village or Spring Lake. Now we have a new operation manager coming on that doesn't have his own truck. And how are we going to supply this man with a pickup truck if if those 3 trucks that we have now, one's really old, right?
We've also added more or more need for the truck with the porter positions requiring a truck half the day that
Right.
wasn't used with the former truck.
Lauren, would
But
vehicle replacement fall under the reserve and not under operating?
Replacement, yeah, but if she's adding a new one, that's a capital.
So you're saying we need to go 4 to 3
From 3 to 4.
or 3 to 4, yeah.
Because you have to take into consideration, like, how do the porters get to Island Village now? Do they use a
They,
pickup truck?
yeah, they grab the truck.
And Island Village, not Island Village, Spring Lake.
I think it would come out of capital, though, not budget.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we need it, then we can, take it from the capital. So at that point,
It's,
The purchase of the truck would, but any maintenance
But any
required,
maintenance
like
would,
oil
yeah.
changes or tires.
well,
whatever.
this just gave me an idea when I saw vehicle maintenance, like, okay, I know that one truck is old, so that would come out of capital.
Old truck would come out of
The
reserve.
whole- No, would it come out of reserves?
the old truck.
If
new
you're
truck.
So,
Old truck, yeah, okay, yeah.
old truck you don't use as much, so you won't have as much maintenance.
They're used all line.
Together, what current vehicles we have, condition, mileage, average cost of maintenance, things of that nature, so that we can have a discussion at the board level
Right.
of, do we need to put some capital improvement into another vehicle
Right.
for the town? And I don't think it's necessarily a bad time, because I see the auto industry continuing to be under pressure. So there may be some good deals toward the end of the year that it may be the right time to purchase that vehicle.
Wow, we agree on something.
I don't know why it's.
No, I'm just saying.
No, I think it's an area we need to focus on. It's
Thank
not
you.
part of the, I think the vehicle maintenance on the operating doesn't need to be there, but on the capital side, yes, there's definitely a need for it that we have to review, similar to like the maintenance, I'll call it shack that
The
we have down there,
bathrooms, Right,
that needs improvement as well. So
okay, thank you.
Under repairs and maintenance I know there were a few things, many things on the reserve study this year that were essentially under reserved, that we ended up having that challenge. Is looking at forward at 25, are we expected that there will be any other things that we would need to pull out of? I guess it would be capital, so it wouldn't necessarily come under a maintenance piece, right? That's how we would offset a shortfall in reserves.
Well, you can, so just because the reserve says it's $400,000 to replace it, doesn't mean you can't spend 500,000 out of reserves to replace that item, as long as you're replacing like for like. Where you need to tap into capital is when you're upgrading.
Got it. Okay, yeah, okay.
just for this one too, right? So this was budgeted for 135,000 in 2024. Our current spend is 263 for this year that we're looking at actuals on the projected side. And then 2025, we're putting another 20,000 on top of that number that we expect to spend this year on repairs. and maintenance.
So Lauren, we talked about that car the other day, but I think you said CROA.
Yes.
It's out there. I would think that's pretty underutilized. There's some way we can get into a sharing agreement with that vehicle.
Okay, well, look at how much it's utilized. Chris is usually in it a good chunk of the day.
I see him parked an awful lot up there. An awful lot, in the wrong spot at times.
Yes, we'll talk about that. Yes, in putting together the vehicle information.
We should look at all the assets and if we can optimize those.
I mean, granted, it is owned by Canella, so.
It could be part of your negotiation for the marketing person.
Sign on it, drive it around town. Marketing,
Print a bag.
digital truck. Sorry, carry on.
Okay, we're good?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Hang on,
Yes,
please.
Okay,
can we get to irrigation?
no, we're.
Nope, we're about to. Hot damn.
Sound.
It's a huge amount,
Huge amount.
$5,000.
Did you say huge amount?
It's a joke. Little sarcasm. 5,000 versus 6,800, so down 1,800. And we just put in one number.
Yes.
Do we need to raise that number?
So, I mean, it used to be high in previous years. But Brian Causey fixes a lot of the breaks and broken heads, even if they're not caused by him, at no cost to us under the cost of his contract. So,
I mean, there's always an issue with irrigation.
well, you do have, irrigation is also in your reserve study as well. So if you have a major irrigation issue, then you can,
Clock replacement.
yeah, then that can come out of reserves.
Janitorial?
Janitorial, okay.
Sorry.
4% increase, we don't expect a big increase there. Safety and security, we talked about with new security folks, a better deal, so that's, we have that projected down 25,000. Yes,
Okay. The bottom, the sheriff cost sharing,
yes,
I'm serious. So we had a budget of this year for $12,000. It's zero for next year. Have we gotten a bill for the $12,000 yet?
We haven't gotten a bill and neither has Lexington. So I talked to Mike Nunes about it today. He said he cut it from his budget for next year and he plans on notifying the CDD that he's not participating in the cost sharing agreement anymore.
So if we're not gonna put it in our budget, should we maybe tell the CDD that too?
yes.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation. We pull out of that.
We discussed need more discussion on that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, that needs to go on your board meeting.
thank you. Sorry.
No, thanks for bringing it up. Reclaimed water, 209,000, we have a 5% increase. Nothing major. It's pretty. So this is the whole water bill thing has been a disaster.
Raise it by 5% and move along.
That's right.
Like y'all-
Exactly.
so this also takes into account I said we're getting passive parks through phase 2. So that's all baked into this too, with phase 2B, like with the projected irrigation.
We're not anticipating to take over any passive parks in 25.
Okay,
yeah.
They want to pass all the passive parks and the amenity center to us at the same time.
interesting. Okay.
They don't want to do the phased approach that we did last time, which I appreciate.
I assume the passive parks in Island Village are not metered.
Pardon?
Not metered.
They're not on the Maxicom system. They are individually metered. We don't share meters
They
with,
are. Okay.
yeah. We don't share meters with CDD in Island Village, which is nice.
That's a good note. Water's been an issue for
Ever.
centuries.
And it'll continue to be.
Yeah.
You would think we know.
You know,
It just seems to be a circular. Okay, other operating expense. This is big numbers, $3 million. This is involved with the joint committee expense of 1.85, which is increasing 87,000. Trash removal expense of $1 million, expected to be 54,000 higher, 25. And then the rental for the Bank of America building is also included in this category.
trash is a pass through though, so.
True. Any questions on that? Okay. Administrative expenses. So professional fees, as Andrew mentioned, we have both town and the architects budgeted at $25,000 each in 25. We don't know if they have been informed that there's any restrictions on how much they can spend, but we would like to encourage the board to make sure that they are informed. We have a budget and try not to.
So there's 50,000 essentially. Oh, sorry, never mind.
25 each.
25 each. And then where are we coming in at usage this year?
Right now, the town architect is right at 17.
And we picked him up in June.
So like, it was like around 4,000 a month.
Yeah,
So in 2022, when this was budgeted before it was cut, they were both budgeted at $30,000 a year. And both of their hourly rates were lower. Now you have more homes, more ARC applications, and their rates are higher.
So with this in bringing on a town architect and landscape architect, I was looking at it as a consultant role. And I don't expect the town architect to look at every single ARC review. That there should be stuff that the ARC committee can handle on their own.
Sure.
The more challenging ones are where they seek the help of the architect, and that's what we get built for. So I know we're at 4,000, and I think there needs to be more controls on that with Graham Manners as far as a board, what we expect should be brought to an architect and what shouldn't be. And that way we control those costs to ensure that we're not paying 50 grand when we're only budgeted for 25.
yeah, okay. I think, so seeing what's coming into ARC, there are a lot more complicated things that are gonna hit it. So I think we need to probably have as a board a conversation about ARC in general on kind of how that operates. And then I think too, we need to then figure out to put some guardrails around what actually Jeffrey or Albert look at. Because I think that right now, there's a lot of things that if there's anything that's contentious, we essentially pitch it to the architect to try to, figure it out.
Is Jeffrey doing those, like meet and greets? Was that included in the 4,000 or was this just ARC, like?
He did a couple of them, but he hasn't done any additional. Most of this is
So it's like literally the 4,000 is all ARC. So then you'd be essentially recutting that in half.
I guess, can you produce how many ARC reviews he's completed versus how much he's billing? What that number looks like, and then maybe project that out into next year of if we're expecting 10 reviews at a certain clip, then that's what we budget off.
He's not looking.
There's also attendance of the.
Things that we're fast tracking, right? Yeah, so we'll. So it's never-
No, but I have to say, he's a big help when it comes to the ARC committee, even though I haven't been to the meetings, but when it comes before our appeals,
Yeah, having.
he's a big help explaining, yes, maybe, I don't know, well, let's try it. So he's worth whatever we're paying him.
I think the piece that we're gonna run into is we're gonna need to make sure, right now, ARC has been a little bit more generous in saying, can you please work with the landscape architect on this, or work with, our town architect to come back with a cleaner proposal, or the things to correct. And I think in some of those things, we're gonna need to figure out another way to do that. Whether it's ARC has to do it themselves. Otherwise, it's going to frustrate
I
residents.
think we need to have serious discussion at our board meeting maybe about this. And in light of the fact that they're missing one committee member now, they're down to 4. We may need to relook the 5 people on ARC and,
Yeah, I think that's a bigger discussion.
but
But I
yeah,
think to the operating expenses point though, is I do think we need to figure out, we need to get a little bit more rules of engagement with Jeffrey and Albert and give them kind of a scope so that we know exactly
what they're doing.
what it is.
We agree. We only talked about this, we agree totally.
Yeah.
You might think if they get into a project with Jeffrey, for example, where it requires some blueprints and drawings or concepts or whatever, maybe there's some kind of schedule where there's a copay from the resident. Because it goes beyond the scope of a normal consultation, because when I did a project, I had to go and hire an engineer or an architect. So maybe you got a copay and Jeffrey helps a little bit and whatever, but there's gotta be a copay, because Jeffrey can do a lot of work. He can take a project a long way.
Right, but what I'm saying is during the appeals meeting, there's a lot of times that we as a board, at least I feel that way, don't know. Yes or no, we upholding their recommendation or not. And he he puts it in perspective and he helps us
Yeah.
decide what we're gonna do. He shows up to our appeals meeting, so that's important that we have somebody that has that knowledge.
I agree. I think it's very valuable there, but then I think outside that, and that's the core of what he does. Outside that, I think you gotta think, how do you regulate that so it doesn't, creep.
We've got new homes coming on, we've got people that are wanting to change things, so it's both discussion, whatever that looks like.
Okay, we'll pass over bank fees. Association communications, which is budget mailings, welcome packages, maps and flyers. Up 2,500 projected.
Is any of that impacted by the smart webs location?
That's in,
That's because there's mailings that go with that, right? With the covenants process?
yes, that's built into part of the smart webs number.
That's, okay, got it.
So the smart webs number came from the cost per door per month. And then the average number of covenants violations that we send out each month. And the average number of second and third letters sent out each month.
Got it. And that's not in this number, that's in.
No, that's in, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Did you get to insurance yet?
That's in CJC.
No, insurance,
It's empty though.
We're looking at the high level view, not the line by line.
no,
I know.
the insurance doesn't.
PJC budget, not the CROA budget.
It's empty there.
okay,
We're going through that. You're looking at the line by line. He's doing the,
I know, but
no, I'm saying.
but I'm trying to, I wanted to ask a question about the insurance.
Mhm.
And it is through CJC.
Yes.
But while it's in my head, I don't want to forget, only because we had a meeting today with one of the service areas. And he said, right, Jacob, he said, you may want to bring it to the board.
Oh.
So this is a good conversation with you guys. They want to know if they can get like a group rate for their roofs. Like if there's 30 units, instead of them,
So there is an opportunity for them to do a group insurance in their documents, but we'd have to work with legal on how that looked.
but they don't have, we don't have to go to finance and we don't, and the board has to approve that?
It's a service area. It would be a service area expense.
I believe in our conversation with the insurance contact that it was brought up as a question and there was nominal savings, if any, on doing that. But it is something that we can go back to them and look into.
It was brought up?
No, that's a different conversation.
Different conversation. I'm talking about the townhomes
So
with their roofs.
That's a different conversation that we can have
Okay,
the council.
I just want to make sure it's not part of what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
We should tell you, we are going to be meeting with the insurance people to talk about liability. About 75% of our policy is in the liability coverages. Last year, remember, we took some stuff out of property and self-insured. So we're trying to attack that 75%. We already talked to Kevin before, but we're gonna have him in for another meeting just to explore it and not create any exposure and see what might be possible.
Okay, administrative expenses, which include the mailing, 77,000 is labor burden. And other miscellaneous costs are in this category. We have it coming down $8,000. The IT network, which we've had a lot of activity trying to clear up all the expenses and understanding them. That's been a lot of up and down during our process this year. But I think we finally got it figured out. So we're at $183,700, $8,300 increase, 4.8% expected next year. IT expenses. And big category compensation, $220,000 increase, a 20% increase. As I said, there's 3.5 additional positions. Facilities maintenance staff, they have up 134,000, service area staff up 271,000, but recreation staff down 191,000. We didn't get detail headcounts or we have headcounts, but we don't have any of the detail compensation or anything like that. And I
Yeah.
understand.
This conversation, that's where on some of the positions, we did pay up for better quality for certain positions, so that's part of it, and then the rest of it would be the 3.5 additional headcount for inspectors and orders, things of that nature. All that.
The rec staff,
Why can't I say down?
Yeah, that's,
So the, sorry.
Go ahead.
You there?
oh no, just rec staff, I just didn't know that the costs are down.
It's because the categories are switched.
Did it just switch?
Service area, it should say rec, where it says rec, it should say service area.
Okay, okay.
the service area is down and recreation is up. Is that
No,
what-
no, that's right. Rec, we took one away. I thought we took away from rec and then we added on service. Because if we look at the line.
Go to the detail page.
Line by line, that's going up by 207.
And is that lifestyle? So is that also, is lifestyle and record now?
I was trying to find it in the detail and I.
Yeah, go to line 362 is compensation.
Line 362.
Says recreation staff is down 191.
So I guess Lauren's saying they're backwards.
They're backwards.
So the word is backwards. So if you want to fix that, take it off.
So service area staff,
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's projected is 113 going up to 384.
So this-
Okay, that's going up and rec
It
is
should be
going.
service area.
Rec is up,
So-
service area is down.
Yes,
So the line item's wrong on that.
yes.
Description. Jacob, can you go down over to the head count summary? Show that.
How is service area down? You know, backfill or,
So this is the detail on the head count by area. So
Because the porters fall under Parks and Rec, right?
No, they fall under maintenance.
Oh, they do fall under maintenance. Okay.
so recreation staff is 270. Right?
seasonal pool monitor and then a full-time pool.
Yeah, rec staff should be the 270.
The service area is down. Do you have enough staffing now with this budget, Lauren?
So with, yeah, I know, Mike.
if
With this budget, we're adding an inspector halfway through the year. Right. In June of 2024, 25, July of, why not January? That was discussion with the finance committee and we kind of came to an agreement to add it halfway through.
yeah, it's because they had just added an inspector and we felt that they should have time to see what that new inspection could do.
But how many inspectors do you have now? There's 4 dedicated to CROA.
It's up on the screen.
Oh, okay, I can't see that far.
Okay, so
So I'm just trying to think my head. You have 4 now. What's the turnover with them? Quite frequent. I know it's quite frequent, like, by the time. It's a low paying job out in the heat and people don't like you. So by the time they, seriously, myself. Well said.
Now hiring.
But by the time they learn, by the time they learn their task, their job on how to do an inspection, go through the whole process, they're out the door and a new one's coming in. So why can't we have the 5th one to be the backup for when the 4th one leaves?
I think I see a volunteer position.
I have nothing to do more, so I'm trying to understand why, what's the cost, the savings? We talked about this and we were thinking that we don't quite know the full impact of smart webs yet on the staff's productivity. So we would do kind of a proof of concept in the first 6 months, and then we would have the funds there if it proved that we do still need the 5th person.
Plus, we know we're gonna need a person in 2026 when you have more doors coming on board in Island Village.
So what's the cost? I'm just trying to ask what the cost difference is of 6 months.
It's the difference between 39,000 and 17,000.
So,
Like another
Plus-
20,000 plus.
Plus labor burden benefits.
But it's to your
The main
point,
thing we talked about was continuous recruiting. Because in this position and then the park monitors and where else we have high turnover, I forget what we talked about, that there should be continuous recruiting. So we always got somebody in the hopper position to come in, so we shorten that gap when it occurs. But I think right now, these high turnover positions, you've got the big gap with the recruiting like that. You gotta be in a continuous recruiting. process.
no, I think
Can you keep those positions posted? Like,
That's what he's talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like online.
So you got live, real resumes ready to go.
so. If we had 5 inspectors inspecting our community, maybe things might run a little bit more smoothly.
Mike?
Like,
I think once Island Village, we definitely need 5.
well,
And
I kind of think they need it now because Island Village is its own. It's sorry, Jim, but you live there. It's its own little island. And you need a designated, I think that you need a designated inspector down there.
So I'm gonna make a comment that may not be popular. My challenge with adding headcount is we're talking about a lot of theoretical, right? And I'm accustomed to when you do headcount, there's a business case. And I'm not seeing that with field, like we're saying, yes, we need a field inspector, but what are they going to be doing for 8 hours a day? What's the case? What do we have now? What are they doing? For the most capacity models is what, 6.5, 7 hours a day?
So this is why,
This is where I struggle a little bit with these positions being.
so this is why we agreed with the 6 month, because if you'll recall the RFP committee did the math on kind of how many inspectors you needed in just traditional celebration, not including Island Village, and that was a solid 4 that you needed.
And then there's Island Village.
So then now you add Island Village. It's it's a little bit of a stretch for them, especially now with this fully manual process. But with smart webs, it's gonna make it a little bit easier. So the money's in there for a person at the 6 month mark, but we can reevaluate and see where we're at. And then maybe you have some savings since you don't specifically need the person.
I guess I'm not a fan of, I want to see the case now before we put it in. That's just me. Maybe I'm off on that, but I'm not a fan of just like plugging this in and then hoping there's something for them to do.
Well, there's plenty to do.
Well,
I
I know, but there needs,
think the business cases, and Warren, please check this, but I think we only have 3 inspectors employed at one time. That 4th one is always going through and turning and turning.
Isn't your 4th one Canoa?
they're split, aren't they? Between,
No, there's another one. There's one specifically just for canola.
That's Chris.
Like, how
And you have-
often do we have 4 inspectors in a given month for a year? Is it 3 months that we have 4, 6 months?
The better question is how often do you have them that are fully trained
Trained,
to
yeah.
do a current service area?
I just,
That's the issue. That's the biggest issue. Right now, we have 2 that that can't really handle a fully loaded plate, that are often requiring to take an additional inspector out on more complicated issues. So it's cutting it into that.
I think.
if I could just say, just from a numbers perspective, since we're never fully employed, putting that in mid-month, even if we hired them in the first quarter, chances are our total numbers are going to be the same.
I'm not gonna die on the hill. It's more a philosophy of just, I think we need to be cautious about.
But we're trying to make improvements. We're trying to get things right. We're trying to get everything the way it's supposed to be working. And if we're saying, no, we'll wait till July. Let's see if Smart Webs works. Let's wait until July. Is that Don telling me to be quiet?
No.
No. Let's wait till July to see if this concept works. Why can't we get on top of things and get all these inspections going so that the residents aren't getting hit with things that aren't necessarily correct.
But I think
So
to
I think
Jim's
that-
point, right, if we have the expectation that we're gonna have 5 inspectors, based on the turnover, we're probably only be paying for 4.5 anyways.
So why can't we have this person start in January?
I think it's two different discussions. If you want to, if we, first of all, when was the last time we had 4 inspectors?
We just do now for like the last month.
So we don't.
So we can-
And covenant has been slammed and ripped apart.
So I think the other piece of this is that, so the inspectors are out in the field every day, coming back, doing their, inserting their violations, you know, printing, pushing them out. There's not that customer service piece of being able to go out and meet with the residents and explain what's going on, which is a lot of the feedback that we get is residents are confused by the letter. Even when the language is exceedingly specific about the front left mulch bed needs of, you know, additional mulch, like they like the inspector to come out there and that takes time out of their day.
Right.
So
And
I think it's a service level expectation as well.
Posing it this way too, we have 4.5 budgeted for manual work, and we're doing a half a person for smart webs as that automation efficiency, so we're pretty much at 5 between the 4.5 budgeted and smart webs being paid.
And if we don't put it in, that doesn't mean we don't do it and we can do it earlier. It's not drop dead money. It's not gonna blow the budget or anything like that.
It's not gonna, but it would be a good idea to put it in, just so we don't have to worry about.
I agree with Charles here. I think throwing people at something when you don't really know what you've got. And we don't know yet what our capacity is with the 4 until we get them fully staffed. That's gonna be a process here. That'll be the.
I understand what you're saying, Mike, but how many covenants meetings have you gone to in the past 4 years?
That's an emotional perception.
And if you
What's going
don't,
on.
no, if you don't have the inspectors trained correctly and they're constantly revolving around the door, that process is broken right at the time that the inspector is gone and a new one comes on. So if she always has 5 inspectors on,
You're not getting to the root cause, and honestly,
the
again,
root cause, inferior software.
Well, so there's 2 ways you can look at this too. There's another thing that says, do we need? Yes, we can make the argument that you need 4 inspectors, but we really, at that point in time, the math says that we only have 3.5 because we always have 1 out the door. The other way of looking at this, I'm not proposing this finance committee, is you increase the salary of the inspectors
Yeah.
so that they stay and then maybe you do it with 3. And it's like, well, I can be yelled at and be out in the heat for, you know, a little bit more money, but it's a different way of looking at it too.
we
Oh,
acknowledge,
sorry.
yes, sir.
Give me 2 minutes. We did the business case for 4 inspectors during the RFP. And the board agreed to do, 2,478 per quarter. That's how many homes and townhomes we have for our village. If you do a full inspection of a house, it takes 30 minutes if you're well trained, because you have to go around the back of the house and look from the alley also. So that's why it takes 30 minutes. The 4 inspectors were calculated at doing every inspector out in the field 8 hours a day to do nothing but initial inspections. 4 people in a quarter. That does not include the inspections when the re-inspections, when the homeowner fixes what they're going to do, and you have to go out to that particular house and look at it again to make sure they did it right. It doesn't include resales. It doesn't include estoppel inspections. It doesn't include customer service. When you add in all those and getting ready for the inspection day during the covenants inspection, we're just talking 4 people do nothing but inspections 8 hours a day. When you include all that other stuff, it really takes 6 people.
Thank you, Gary. So do we want to just like do the math, like the 3.5 people at Smart Webs, and we're just put this person in place? You just heard Gary. He's the expert on covenants.
So I'm prepared to just keep letting, it was more so just, right now, I get where you're coming from with that. I get that we're adding homes and whatnot. but we need to make sure that these people are actually doing things and that we're doing the process improvement and that we're actually getting the value for what we're.
Do you think they're sitting down doing nothing all day? He just said what the whole entire inspection. No, you sat on covenants. If those pictures aren't right, they gotta go back. We have to table it. We're gonna impose fines. Then we have to bring it to appeals. They're just not sitting in the office doing nothing. And when they're in the office, they're on their computers. But they have to go back multiple times to look at the same violation.
Should we see how CORE works?
We know how it works. How does it work, Warren?
Well, with a manual, with manual.
That's why we don't know.
We don't know. We've got
But we made our recommendation. The board can decide what you want to do. Right?
Sorry,
We spent a lot of time on this.
I'm sure you did, but I'm years going and watching how the covenants process is broken because of the lack of inspectors.
That's a staffing problem. That's not a headcount problem.
Right, because you can't keep the inspectors.
Then we'll fix that problem.
Yeah, fix it if we're not paying them.
Well, that's called incident. You change the salary.
Conversation.
Isn't this Graham Adams' decision?
If we're telling.
I mean, shouldn't they be recommending if they want to increase the headcount?
Right.
Maybe she don't want to because she's gonna get pushback.
I agree.
Beginning to test, to be honest, what you need. And if this is what they're saying that they need, and this is what the finance committee recommends, I feel comfortable personally going. with what they have.
Well, Gary.
As
just
do I.
What the process is.
Lauren, what do you need?
Okay, you guys can talk this over. If you decide you need to hire this person sooner, just let us know.
Thank you, Jay. That could have shut me down a long time ago.
Okay. Any other questions on compensation or headcount? Okay, so we're,
Can I work part-time as an inspector? How does that work?
A part-time inspector?
Yeah, why not? No,
just walk around your house.
no, we've already done the volunteer taking pictures of people's houses. It's already,
Move forward.
Too soon.
Okay, just real quick on allocations, the capital resale allocation, again, we're pretty much keeping things even at the same amount of how homes going to be sold and things like that. The capital fund allocation, we are taking 500,000 out of the basically the dues and putting it into the capital fund. And then the replacement fund allocation of $1,071,000 depends on the study that we should get in the next couple of weeks. And if that is $1,200,000, then we've got to decide if we're going to change the budget or if it's something we can push off till next year and something like that. So that's really where we are with that.
The capital resale allocation, is that true resales or does that also include, because when Mattamy puts a plat in, that home is transferred, we get a capital contribution when that happens too, right?
No, they just start paying.
Not when they pull the plat, but when they sell the home the first
When
time.
they sell the home the first.
They get the capital. Right, they pay dues,
Right, they pay dues on the ground, right, but
but until they actually sell that home to a resident, that's when the capital fee would be paid.
got it, okay.
And again, they're projecting 50 homes and 40 townhomes in phase 2 for next year, but we did not include that in, so keeping.
But that would, even though it's like a brand new home, it still be categorized as the resale.
You still pay the capital, so everybody who moved into Highland Village phase 1 had to pay the capital.
Yeah,
Resale allocation is truly a tax.
yeah,
Yeah. And that concludes our discussion on the budget.
oh, easy.
Good job.
Pain points.
Are there from an operating, and this is where I get confused, or not confused, but I need to be reminded on the difference between operating, which is what this is, and what we're having to take out of capital for things, because I think that's where I get nervous on things like maintenance costs because we were way over on maintenance this year. I don't see that slowing down. Even if we do a bunch of things, we're still gonna have an overrun in maintenance. So does that mean that we're dipping into operating, like what happened this year? We went over in maintenance, but we had to pull from the capital in order to do more of the renovation projects and those sort of things. But like the,
Like what, which projects?
like, there's like the mulch. But like the, okay, a good, the amphitheater. Yeah, the gazebo at Lakeside had to be redone.
That was reserves.
That was reserves. So the amphitheater and Artisan had to be pressure washed and painted. And it was
The maintenance staff did that.
correct, but that cost
Yes,
somewhere,
that's in operating.
and that was an operating.
If the maintenance staff doesn't,
All of that?
that's a part of your overage.
Yeah,
So
so
part of the under,
this-
we're gonna have a negative.
We're going negatives. That's where I'm
160,000 plus or so, 180 right now, 180 is a projection. And that, Eric, as long as we've got a good working capital fund, we can absorb that. At some point, running too many deficits will deplete that reserve that's in the, I shouldn't use the word reserve, that's in the working capital fund.
Working.
operating fund.
Yeah, that's what I worry about. I don't want to essentially get too greedy by taking from that.
We absorbed 220,000 last year, 240 was most of the.
195 was 851.
Yeah, 195 was 851, but we absorbed that in the operating and never took any money out of the reserve or the capital to replenish that.
And
Okay.
for maintenance, right, this year, it was originally budgeted for 135,000. Our spend is projected to be 263, so over 130,000. We're budgeting that
Double
for
it.
284 next year.
Got it. Okay.
So we are 150,000 higher than what it was this year for budget.
For budget. Okay. That's okay. Thank you.
So, from a master plan perspective, and we talked about splash pads. Right now, nothing is necessarily set for 2025. We've talked a little bit, they presented some things. Nothing here is contemplated if we build splash pads, if we did the park enhancements from a maintenance ongoing cost perspective. That's not baked into here at all,
It's not baked in here at all,
if we decide.
because until, in my feeling, the master plan new group is put together. And if it is, so splash pads, for example, will be a capital, right?
So yeah, a splash pad would be capital, but if it's a new splash pad, I would hope there would be minimal maintenance, but any maintenance on it and the
As a staff.
contract for the chemicals, for cleaning the water and the circulation, the additional water cost would be an operating expense.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's where the finance committee will want master planning to work with us to make sure we do that kind of cost and include all the maintenance. So any of the master plan type of expenditures, you want that whole set of saying, are you going to have to hire another part-time Parks and Rec person? Or are you going to have to hire another maintenance person, whatever, once you do this?
I would say it's difficult to project knowing what the future board is, what their needs of wants will be, and then when those projects get done. So you're trying to reserve for something that you don't know if it's 9 months, 3 months, 1 month, no month. It's tough to do. So that's something where you may always be behind in what that maintenance cost is, and you catch up in that following year once it truly is an asset to the community.
Sure. And again, there's costs for the kids pool now, so if we're taking that out, have
Right.
those costs and it'll be.
Fewer pipers.
That's
That one hopefully should,
Yeah, should somewhat.
shouldn't show any giant budget changes.
Right.
If
that frog.
Well, how about
That clock's gone.
The frog's going?
it's like water, we don't talk about the frogs.
Yeah, very high level, very high level. You'll have enough money to do phase one, the master plan. And also pay up to $2.5 million for the repair, if you repair, if that's what comes in at. You'll be able to fund both those things with the capital fund and where it sits over the next 2 to 3 years. You'll see some numbers and we'll talk about them.
That's a lot of money, Mike. That's scary.
That's 0%.
I know they said it's okay. It's still a lot of money.
Yeah. Your phase one is 2.7 million. The building could be 2.5, so that's 5.2.
But since nothing else breaks.
Right, so right now you got 3.5 in the capital fund. And Andrew's gonna go through some stuff, and if you ramp that up, put it on steroids, the next couple of years, you could have that ramp up a lot faster than what we have been.
Right, and you're still in this budget, right? We're putting 451 from capital resale currently, if we don't make any change, and then the 500 from capital contributions, so that's close to $1 million there. But then, yeah,
Buy a
if you
truck.
want, we can move into the capital.
Maybe two.
Discussion of
Yeah.
what that change should look like,
Okay, so I think,
but let's finish the budget first.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
Sure the budget.
I'm done.
Close.
So, yeah, I mean, if there's no other concerns, questions, areas to look at, then I think right now we're at the 6.8. We wait for the reserve study to come in. Depending on what those numbers are, we might have to reallocate things. And then with the grant managers contract and the CROA cost sharing, that would be the next thing that could potentially change.
We should expect the reserve is gonna go up though.
Yes.
Right.
The current reserve study does not contemplate anything in Island Village. So your new one will have all the passive parks, the new playground, pool, amenity center.
Got it.
That shouldn't affect next year.
Right.
You can hold it where you are. What we can do is fund it out of the, you can amortize it through next year, or we can fund it out of the capital fund.
Okay,
So it goes up by 200 over what we got plugged down.
that's fine. Yeah,
Just take it out of the capital fund if you want to do that. You'll have options to look at that.
okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on how large that number is and if it can be absorbed in 1 year or we need to stretch.
We
it.
can stretch it out. Okay.
Yep. So real quick, before we move to capital. Are we going to do a line by line? That's the typical, I mean, last year we did a line by line through each one. Had commentary about it. Fine tuned it. What is the recommendation?
As far as the budget,
Yeah, do we need to do that as a subsequent meeting? What do you all?
I don't think so. I mean, you have it. If you have questions, you're more than free to email me. I'd be happy to answer the questions, or the finance committee.
So if you have any line by line questions, go ahead and ask them now.
What's the position on homeowner activities? The expenses? Is there anything for about 252,000? That I saw in that. Can you bring up the line by line?
At least one truck.
285.
The Cybertruck.
Oh, Lord, no. No, they said a working truck.
That's mean.
Cybertruck looks cool.
Expenses
Chairs, but
neutral, is that what you mean?
We,
Yeah, so I guess in my conversation with finance on that, and we did go line by line through it, but I think we should look at more of the holistic number, and it's up to that committee to determine how to allocate those resources versus us dictate what they should or should not spend on individual events.
well, they get a bucket, right? I mean, essentially, if they decide that they don't want to spend as much on one, it's not like reserves. I mean,
No.
they can move it around.
And Lauren, they provided those numbers to you, right, as far as what they were looking for?
Yeah, there's a sub tab that,
Right, so that's what they provided that. I don't think we really adjusted any of those. That what we took from the committee was what was passed through to the.
and it's
But is it,
25 is $122 less than what the projected 24,
still 280.
285, 518.
Yeah, we were budgeted for 2 weeks.
Cancel Easter, buy a truck. Put an egg on it.
The bunny can go.
Yeah, buddy can fly on the truck. See?
but again,
That's operations capital.
Just money.
So that's
finance committee
$58
has gone through this
a year.
budget line by line 4 or 5 times. So
This
I mean, from the
285,
standpoint of how much detail you want to really get into, again, you have it. If you want to ask questions or send questions, please go ahead.
just from a big picture perspective, the 285, 518 is $58.21 a door a year.
I remember the conversation last year of drawing a parallel to a Disney annual pass. Which I think is a false equivalence because we're a homeowners association, and that's a theme park. So, but. No, I wanted to see where we are. I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but
Sure.
not,
We're here.
not in 30
Conversation.
in 36 minutes. I don't know, as we look at this and we start talking about trucks and other things,
Truck is capital though, so not operating.
Maintenance on the old truck.
maintenance on the old truck.
Yeah.
You get a new truck, you can get rid of the maintenance down.
Then
Yeah.
for,
You're concerned that we have too many events.
It's not too many, it's a lot.
do you
That,
think that question should go to the special events committee?
well, I guess I'd ask, yes, I think it should. I think it should go to the special events committee because I think at this point, for us, I don't know, I feel like that maybe needs to be tightened up a little bit,
This is a little bit.
So
Yeah.
the initial ask.
So after version 1 went to the committee, they pushed back Parks and Recs and homeowner activities. And those went back to the committees for them to discuss it again. And lifestyle came back a little bit lower and Parks and Rec came back a little bit lower.
Those are the biggest.
but I guess in your thought, right, is the 285 a bad number, or are you looking at a conversation with those committees to say we want bigger events, but if you were
I'm trying-
here or smaller events? but we're on-
Yeah, I don't want it to be like 285 is a high number. It's like just, not that it's arbitrary, whatever, but I feel like we have a lot of expenses. We have a lot of other things going on. I feel like this is the one place where maybe we need to look at a little bit differently, both with the number of events and the overall aggregate. If there's an opportunity maybe to take that back and, I don't know, do some things differently.
Can I ask you a question, Warren, about under this, where it says, is this line new program events?
Oh,
Like
okay,
50.
yeah.
Is that $55,600?
That's $12,000.
No. Okay, because I'm trying to straighten this line across.
Holiday concert is 55,000.
55,000 for the holiday.
Now, again, often the pushback we got on this, when we asked the reduction was these events have larger attendance and all of the costs keep going up larger than most of the inflation even.
I guess on the other side too, is you still have an opportunity for revenue depending on if you're selling tickets or if it's open to all of Osceola for specific events. There's opportunities to offset the expenses that are currently there or sponsorships.
And we have more sponsorships this year, right?
Right.
Yeah, we every year we increase the sponsorships that are coming in.
I think.
And I think with a new manager dedicated to comms and kind of reaching out to, we've already talked about them kind of engaging with the Canoa businesses more and creating that relationship that can bring in more.
So in the interest of moving to capital, I have some thoughts on this. Let me write them and I'll shoot them over to the committee. And I need to admittedly study a little bit further.
Remember, you want to look at the income too. There's 85,000 of income for these events, so the net is 200.
But we don't open our events to Osceola County.
No,
No, and pretty
That
much
would be-
the,
That goes under CCS, which doesn't CJC contribute to, doesn't Canoa contribute to that?
CJC funds CCS at 20,000 a year.
which whether you agree with this or not, I go into every homeowner event expecting a loss, not a break even or not making tax tax. So if there does need to be a conversation of, well, we need some of these events to be net positive or break even, then is there sponsorship opportunities that we can still keep it closed? Or no, we can't hold it as a homeowner event. It needs to be broader so we can cover the expenses. But again, that's all conversation. for
I know.
committees. don't-
Yeah.
It's a station, I understand what you're having, but that conversation isn't gonna draw any more revenue because we don't have room for more people. We are like we're at our.
You're saying the events are at capacity.
Yeah, they're at, we can't even accommodate our residents now for our events. So we don't want to think about trying to make money. by opening it up to Osceola County, because you see what happens at the Fourth of
So
July.
then if opening up is not an option, then really you're looking at sponsorship as the only
Right.
opportunity to bridge a gap that would offset
Right.
the burden on homeowners.
And last year, like I said, last year, 2023 was the first year that they made the most in sponsorships.
Can't residents bring in 4 people?
We're
I
trying
think
to
they
change
should be
that.
fine. But if they're bringing in 4 people, those 4 people.
We're working on that. We're seriously trying to work on that. We got a lot of pushback last meeting about that.
Anything else on Upton? Don, did you have anything? Are you good?
I am good. Thank you. I've just been listening.
All right, then Lauren, if you can go back to the summary 2025 budget and go to the capital improvement assessment tab. So
As Andrew's pulling that up, I just want to make a comment. This is probably the most important part of the budget. So this is the strategy. This is where we can get additional amenities built. This is the one you've got to give thought to, and this is where we really need your input. This is where you can make the decision. Chasing a lot of these other dollars, it's not going to move the needle that much. You can fine tune, but this is where you really get the paradigm shift. So
this is our commitment to MPEG and whether we're going to proceed with the report they did. And there's an opportunity here to obtain additional funds to possibly accelerate the timeline of what things we can get done.
What do you mean your commitment, our commitment to MPEG? Yeah,
That we can bring in additional funds to fund the capital account to then be able to spend on the amenities we're trying to do, from their recommendation of splash pad, multipurpose courts.
but they didn't I was at that meeting, we were all at that meeting, and you asked them twice if they were in favor of that 0.5%, and they didn't even have a discussion about it.
It's in the report.
It's in the report, but there's been comments made by people on that group that wasn't even, that it was not a recommendation. It was in the draft report that Joe handed me on page 22. But when you asked them that night, because I watched that video a couple of times, when you asked them, are you in favor of this 0.5? None of them, they looked at each other, they looked around the room, and none of them gave an answer. If it was in the report, they should have all said, yes, we're in favor of it, but nobody commented.
Yeah.
If I can,
You did, Jim,
yes,
that's it.
It is in the final report, though. It's in, yeah, Jim, please speak on this.
I know it's in the final report. What's that?
Jared.
Jared.
Yeah, I know it's in the final report, Jared.
Okay,
So I don't understand why there's a question then. It's very clearly written and they've all authored it.
right, okay, can I comment, please? Okay, so when I was speaking at the impact meeting about the 0.5%, I was speaking as much as a representative of the finance committee as I was for master planning.
Right.
We had not had that discussion in the master planning advisory group because, quite frankly, there are people on that committee who I respect every one of them. But that is not their area of expertise.
Correct, but
Right.
it was in the draft that Joe handed me, so if he.
It was,
didn't have to
it was in the
keep-
draft, but he took it out of the presentation. It was not in the presentation. When the document was sent out, it was the previous document, not the end document. So that was supposed to be taken out, but it wasn't. But the bottom line is, whether the group agrees with it or not, they can, and now I'm going to talk for master planning if I could. We can't do any of those projects unless we get more capital funds, especially with 851.
But the community is dedicated to this group, and they did not sit at the meeting and say, yeah, we're in favor of it. They sat there and looked at each other when he asked
Yeah,
twice.
which that's where I think that was the-
You know, he was
Jim
the
spoke,
finance person
But
of the group.
they were able to speak for themselves because it went to each one of them, and it was asked to the group the question.
But like, so the way it was, like with with like Mark and Alex, their piece was the architect portion for like 851. So they focused on that. Jim
It's the finance,
is the finance person.
right,
So then he's focusing on the finance piece.
But
So
when
they all
people-
have their own
right.
area.
So I think people read the report, they're thinking that NPEG made this recommendation and
Why don't we,
they did it. So I.
why don't we hear it? Yeah, why don't we hear it and reserve? Yeah.
So yeah, I'll lead it, and Mike, if you want to jump in or add additional commentary to it. So we're looking at two options. One option is to just do the 0.5% on the sale of the purchase price. The second option is you do 18 months of assessments and you apply that both to the buyer and seller. So
Andrew, remind me what it is today.
today it is just one.
It's just one assessment, right?
1 year.
One year of assessments. Yeah.
And everything you're talking about is a community vote. To
Yes.
change, this is a charter.
This is a board vote that would be pushed to a community vote.
Okay.
So the first option is the percentage on the sale price. Now, this would bring in new revenue of the 881, which is definitely positive that we would have additional funds going to capital. I guess positive too is that it would be correlated to housing prices, which most of the time they're going up. So this should only keep going up. But again, there's down years. So that's a bad point of there is some type of volatility in what this number may be if we tie it to a percentage of sale price. I guess going to option two, with the buyer and seller, you're expanding it to a larger base. And that's why you get the larger amount of the 939,000, because you're collecting from both the buyer and the seller. So that's larger. The benefit for that is it's fixed. But the concern there is if you do take something to a community vote, is a homeowner going to want to approve something that is going to cost them more money? And my personal view is if you tie it to option two, you are saying, I don't need to increase my dues for the next, say, 5 years. But then when I sell the property, that's when I have this bill come due. And I'm not sure that that's understood within the community or that they would want to do it that way. So in looking at this, I guess in taking one step back and looking at the capital improvement, right? We have our current assessment, we have our $500,000 contribution budgeted for 2025. And then we would have an option of a special assessment or a loan. I don't want
I
to
have
do
a
a special
question.
assessment or loan. That's definitely something we want to steer clear of. So in looking at
One second.
how we,
Oh,
yeah, 1 second. So in looking at it, it's, do we proceed with option one, which is putting it on the buyer and having it there to increase that reserve with a more likelihood of passing a community vote? Or are you looking at option two, where you're hitting the buyer and the seller, you're getting a little bit more benefit on the total collection, but a less likelihood of that getting approved by a community vote? Jared, you can go.
What's the benefit, or what is the necessity of us specifying whether it's on the buyer or the seller? Because all of that can be negotiated by at the time of the sale. So I don't understand why we need to dictate who pays this. It's just a percentage
I
on
don't
the
think
sale
you
of the
could,
house.
Jared, I agree with you. I don't think you could do that. I mean, that's just ridiculous to say it's going to be built into the price of the house.
I would come.
It's got to be specified in the transaction so that we get the collection. They can negotiate within that, but within our charter, as we have now, the 1 year assessment, that is specified for the buyer. Now, if the buyer and the seller want to talk about that as part of the price, they can do that, but they'll do that among themselves, and the money's still going to come from the buyer to us as part of the stop at the time of the sale.
So
if you
it's a
want to
legal
expand-
requirement that we have to specify?
Say again?
It's a legal requirement that we have to specify who has to pay this?
I don't know if it's a legal requirement, but if we want to make a collection from a transaction and have standing in a closing, it's got to be in our charter and they got to sign off on that. And then the closing agent, allocates that money to us. They can decide what the closing statement looks like and who's on which side of the ledger, but that $1,299 or whatever come to us.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. Do we have to say it's from the buyer or the
Right.
seller?
No, I'm sure Jared.
What
no, we
Jared's
don't
saying
have-
is can't we just say 18 months of dues are ours out of the transaction, specifying neither the buyer nor the seller.
I think it would be more than 18, it'd be 36.
Why?
Because it's 18 on a buyer.
Oh, it's 18 on either side. So
Yeah,
not that I'm saying I agree with this, but then 36, wouldn't we just say we want 36 months of dues out of the
Right.
transaction?
Right.
Um,
However they want to figure that out.
I think in the charter, it does, it says buyer in the charter, so you could just keep the wording the same and just change it from 1 year's worth of dues to 3 years worth of dues, which, that's one option, obviously. But I think, I know in this example, it's showing the 36, we'll just call it 36 months, higher than the 0.5. But I think historically over time, home prices increase. So where that may be constant, I think we could get more over time if you project it out, whatever, the typical increases in home values.
Actually,
So
home prices are
option
going
2
down.
will increase by the HOA increase every year.
Right.
So you're looking at, is the price of housing increasing faster than
I would hope so.
HOA dues going up?
I would hope so.
Historically, nationally, not.
So,
Home prices. Go ahead.
go ahead, Doug.
Go ahead, Eric.
So is there a reason why you couldn't do the 0.5%, or is there a reason why it's not being recommended that you could do the 0.5% or 36 months of assessment, whichever's greater?
Well, that's what the 0.5% option would be, that you would have the greater of the 0.5% or 1 year of dues or whatever else you want to put on the bottom. So yeah, I would, if we do option 1, my recommendation would be that we put some type of floor in there. So in the event housing prices go down, we know at a minimum, we're going to collect so much.
And I think you could still tie it to not a firm number. You could tie it to the dues, which then still gives us variability year to year without having to go back for a charter change.
Yeah, if you go back to option 1, I think we have that in, originally we had it in there that
It's
at a
the
minimum,
minimum,
you would
right?
have to pay 1 year of dues, but that could go. Just adding, doing the research that I did do, most places do either 1% or 2 to 3 years worth of dues. And again, looking at the statutes, there was no clarity as to whether you could do both buyer and seller. It certainly talked all the way about a buyer payment. So I do think we have to get legal blessing if we're going to go to the charging both the buyer and seller.
Gary has his hand up.
I don't want to profess an opinion. I'm going to give you a statement of fact because I was on the charter review task force back in 2019. Before the amendment that is currently existing in charter was passed in 2014 by community vote, that there was no paragraph that even addressed this. This was a brand new thing. So it was written for the seller. So I would say, since it never existed in the charter before 2014, you can write it either way or without specifying who pays. I just want to give you that. As long as the legal officer for CROA agrees, I think you have the option.
Right, which maybe that's where we leave it open to, it's just the transaction, the responsibility.
Someone gives us the money.
That can be up to the buyer and seller to figure out.
I think you need to do some diligence on that. That just doesn't feel right to me. The way a transaction's gonna work, I don't know. But I think we need to explore that. When it was done in 2014, it was written that the buyer pays it. And also on the seller today, the foundation gets a small stop on $500 on every home that's sold. And that's paid by the seller, not the buyer. That was written into the original documents. So.
And that can always be negotiated within the two people.
Yeah, anytime, anything's negotiable on a closing
Right.
statement. But just leaving it open seems awful nebulous to me, but I don't know.
It could cause confusion with the residents.
Which is why, I think just going to the 0.5% to the buyer is by far the
Because then
most logical
only,
thing to do.
you're only changing the wording in the charter from where it says 1 year worth of annual dues. You're just changing that to 0.5% of the gross sale price.
It's an easier transition.
But you've also got, so
One
this,
year or 0.5%, whichever is greater.
Yeah, the way it works out, the home would sell for 259,000, that'd be the break point. So that would give you your 1290 or whatever it is. We've got it all charted out. So there was only, what was it, 13?
But that will be stated though, that it would be 13, the dues as the base in case prices collapse.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, that's the cover the floor rent. If we do design it to the buyer, which it currently is, again, every year we're talking about the budget, we can determine what the capital allocation is. So
Well, it's gonna go back to
whoever's living here is gonna get their piece of the pie as well of paying whatever into that capital assessment bucket.
Okay, the 500K, which is the operating allocation.
Right.
We could change that anytime.
That could be a
You
million.
change, if you want to change this one.
Yeah. That has flexibility in any given year, right?
so there's a lot of ifs though. So if this goes to a vote and then if it passes, great, but what happens if so what are our other options? Do we have any other than raising dues to get this? I mean, is there a third option?
No, and the argument again, by
This is all great, but
yeah, otherwise you're gonna be, in order to fund any kind of capital, you're gonna have to increase dues tremendously going forward.
Your sell job,
Or a special assessment.
Yeah.
listen, the way you sell this is a burden on the buyer. It's not on your pocket. If we can't get the funds there, then it's gonna be in your dues. If you want these amenities to come through. So it's a pretty easy decision, I think.
That's
To
people
sell it.
want the amenities to come through. It's not necessarily that the residents are gonna understand that.
Well, if you burden the buyer with this, then the amenities are gonna come through. They're gonna get free amenities, no cost to them.
there's nothing from a TCC perspective because they're resigned their Class B. Is this something
We
where
already have an
That's
existing.
CJC and Canella. This,
Past 10
yeah.
years. So,
I'm saying that they don't, this is nothing that they have to.
This is purely in charge.
It's all-
So I guess in this discussion, right, finance had their discussion and their recommendation was the 0.5% on sale price. So I think that's where, in this discussion, we need to take it a step further of putting it on our board of directors meeting discussion as an action item to proceed with the 0.5%, and then it goes out to a community vote.
So why can't you wait till March, till February to do that community vote?
I would want this
Instead of
to go,
spending
Because we
$11,000.
have capital improvements identified for 2025.
yeah, I
So
would
that's
want this
also
to
the
go
sooner you
into,
get this operational.
I want this to go into effect January 1, 2025. Start there, and I get that it's gonna cost 11,000, but for those 3 months that you lose is gonna be closer to $200,000. So by doing the vote and getting it now, more than pays for itself in the first month.
But the residents need to understand when this comes to their home, what they're voting on. This isn't a price tag. This isn't something that's gonna come to my house, that's gonna say, oh, we're gonna spend $1.6 million on a Lot D project. And, I know, I hate technology. And the resident's gonna go, I don't wanna spend $1.6 million. This is gonna come to my house with all of this information that a lot of residents don't understand. So how do you expect the resident
Yeah.
to vote?
That's all of
That's
it.
educated.
The finance committee is recommending option one. We want it on the agenda for this month so that we can.
To September?
Yeah, because there's gonna be a 2-week window for then 3 weeks of voting, and
So what is
that's
that?
gonna take.
We want,
I mean-
what that would look like if we have it on the workshop.
So if you have it on the agenda, I would say, I wouldn't push it out to starting a vote until mid-October, because I would want to work with the communications committee to develop a full communications plan, so there's an education piece for the residents, because just sending them the ballot with this written information, they're just gonna say, what is this? And like Celia said, 1.6 million, I don't want to spend that, I'm just gonna push it away.
They're not gonna
So
understand this. And they're
you're gonna have to do a social media blitz, you're gonna have to do mailings, and
Are they gonna think it's gonna affect
magazine.
If I'm selling my house, if I'm selling my condo now, oh, wow, I'm gonna get somebody in that's not gonna have that much money, that is
I think the main,
borrowing from every possible area to get money to buy this condo, and now they're gonna be burdened with this. Maybe I should split it with them, maybe I shouldn't. A lot of people are going to feel like when it comes time to, if they want to sell their house, they're gonna have a problem selling their home.
Yeah.
I would say honestly, I would do an October blitz of education and then open polling the first 2 weeks of November.
I think the main thing people, we
no.
need to maybe let people understand is this isn't something new that we're doing. This isn't just changing something we already have.
No, it's adding,
It's changing.
it's
Right, but-
adding the burden on selling your house now.
Hey, Don, what were you gonna say?
On selling.
My question, just for my enlightenment, because I don't remember, what's the threshold on a community vote?
The 27th.
What's a quorum?
It's 10% of the eligible homes, which let's say is 4,500. So that's 450 have to vote or more. And then out of the number
And
of votes.
50.1% of those.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay,
That's
thank you. Thank you.
change to the charter. That's a simple majority.
Yes, but you have to have at least 10%.
Housing back with the severity.
It's in the bylaws.
Thank you. That's what I needed. Yeah, that's what I needed.
And again, when I say take the vote, I agree that there needs to be a campaign put in place to have education for a month to then take it to the actual vote. So this is our step of saying, we have the master plan advisory group, we're doing our budget. This is our next step to proceed. If we're a go for this next step, then we work with the committees, we educate the community, why we're doing it, what it's going to impact, and then we have the.
What's the alternative if you don't?
Yeah, the alternative, HOA dues are
You're gonna pay one way or another. Yeah.
So the alternative is we raise the dues $100 a year and gain how much?
Not enough.
Yeah, it's.
First of all, the dues are
What
gonna,
cost?
gotta know the dues are gonna go every year anyway.
Special event.
Yeah, I mean, you might, I guess you look at it and do you want to do?
Never gonna stop the dues going up.
Right.
And
But you-
to me, a 0.5% on the sale, like people were talking about. I mean, a 0.5% is not a lot of money when you're buying a house. If you're buying, even if you're buying a $2 million house, you think it's gonna make a difference?
It might,
I don't think so.
but there's, how, you go on, you Googled, celebration 34747. How many homes are $2 million in celebration? Maybe 5 in
Okay,
that much.
so if it's only $1 million, I'm paying a lot less.
It's only maybe 5.
Yeah.
You're looking at.
Okay,
the people-
but
So. Are we
can
all
I,
good
can I
having it on the
just,
agenda?
let me ask a quick question. Let me just ask a quick question about it. I just want to make sure that I've got the timeline figured out. This is dependent, though, upon the board. We have not approved the master plan yet,
Right.
Well,
right?
I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the master plan advisory group, projects and everything else, we're gonna need funding and capital. And it's either we use this avenue of the sale and the price of the home, or it's gonna get funneled in the HOA dues for the capital allocation every single year.
If you build a new building for the 851 because it can't be repaired, you'll need a $3 to $4 million down payment in any type of financing. If you build a civic center that costs $15 million, you'll need $4 or $5 million down on a down payment. So those are financing events. Everything we're talking about is, the repair of 851 or phase 1 of the master plan. But it goes far beyond that in terms of our needs.
all right, so we're good. We're all good having that?
Yeah,
This month?
I'll work with Lauren as far as the specific verbiage, and I'll run by finance to make sure they're on board, but that's what we'd want to proceed with and have a discussion about to put it to a community vote. And if we agree, then that's when we need to put what that campaign looks like to ensure there's proper education before homeowners do.
So in the motion, Can you just make sure there's specificity?
I will have
With
Charlie write, I will
everyone.
have Charlie write the specific language, so, and draft some amendment language, so that's out there and ready.
Good.
Good.
Good. Anything else?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
That is good.
Not Eric Oberman.
Yeah.
No, should we all go down the slide?
Oh, no.
Celebrate.